Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SB Reviews where today we have ourselves an EP from an act named Chill Guru Beats titled Dreamscape, the EDM project Volume 2. And if we switch over to here, we've got ourselves this EP on the screen. It's got 5 tracks from Citadel through to Lumi. Now I should know previously that I've reviewed EPs from Chill Guru Beats such as Dreamscape EDM the project Volume 1 if I'm not mistaken, as well as Elements. So I'm familiar with their work and I've typically enjoyed my time with them. But today we're going to be checking out the latest material and we're going to listen through it from start till finish. And we're going to hear what we think. Starting with Citadel, let's go. I love the wistfulness, the nature of it. Strings or a flute? Oh, great fake out there as well. Such an interesting sounding lead as well. Those slides are interesting. I think that was fantastic. So we had some interesting ingredients in Citadel. It was an instrumental featuring guitars, piano, bass, drums, and this interesting kind of flutish lead there that was occasional. It was incredibly elegant and almost it sounded a bit otherworldly or spiritual because of the reverb tails that we had on it, as well as the kind of the throatiness and the texture of it. It was wonderfully mesmerizing in the way it was constructed. We established clear motifs and differentiated between sections in a way that was very smooth with effortless transfers. The parts we had on the different keys and guitars intersected neatly with one another. There was never any kind of ickiness with the way that they harmonized. And I liked the fact that we had points where the drums would come in and the intensity would move up a little bit, but then would come back down again and have that sense of dynamic range to it. So all in all, I think that it was a really positive start to this EP. The theme overall sounding like, when you think of Citadel, Citadel, like it's like a kind of a city, like a medieval kind of city or something like that, right? So apparently a citadel is like a fortress on higher ground above a city, for example. And so you get like the understanding of it, that it's kind of maybe talking about how the citadel is the atmosphere within it. I think it creates a really interesting vibe to it where it sounds a little bit mysterious, like there was some history at that Citadel. It's just little things like that with the instruments that make a track seem larger than life, and I am thankful that I got the chance to listen through it, especially with the Dreamscape ambience. It makes a lot of sense. We got Starlight though, track number 2. Yep, great use of 7ths there. Kind of reminds me a bit like Fly Me to the Moon. Alright, it diversifies here. Just use the panning with the tippy taps. I love the twinkling of those synth leads on the sides though, it's great panning. Slight adjustments with the leads here. Very subtle though. No, that was really well handled. So that was Starlight, the second track off of Dreamscape EDM Project Volume 2. I think part of what sold me on the Starlight concept was those little sparkly synths on the side. It makes you kind of imagine that you are in the nighttime there. It's such a chill chord progression though behind it with those extensions, those 7th chords. It does sound quite close to it kind of I know it's out of tune, but it reminds me of that track a little bit. It's different enough for it clearly not be the same, but I'm almost wondering if that's almost intentional because of the Fly Me to the Moon with Starlight and stuff like that. It does sound a little bit spacey, and I think that the quarter note accents, on the kicks, with the tippy taps, the 16ths on the side there, just the way that there's different rhythms interacting and intersecting in a way where they're easily identifiable and split. The studio production is top tier on these 2 tracks. I haven't spoken about that much yet, but I love the way things are leveled and spread around the stereo field and the frequency spectrum. The way different instruments like the guitars are more of a percussive element here with the way they're strummed. You get the keys or the synths here sort of forming those triads, the bass line being more of like rolling with the root notes of those, not sort of overcomplicating things. The dynamic range that's relevant in the previous track there, as well as the vocal lines. There were these vocal chops here which were wonderful. They were really pretty sounding, and they sparkled alongside some of the other mid to high range elements of the track. And overall, the way that they were combined and amalgamated was very satisfying, and it was really chill to listen to. So I think we're basically 2 for 2. But then we have Lux, track number 3 here. Great arpeggiating there. That riser there as well, nice work. Subtle bass underneath, but very well tethered to everything else. Those choir pads in the mid-range are gorgeous. And the little rustle at the end, very nice, very classy. We've got a little rattle at the end, should I say. That was Lux, track number 3. My understanding about Lux is it's something to do with light of some sort, because it could be like brightness or joy or positivity or something along those lines. And I got that from this track. I think the song overall sounded really positive. I appreciated the tone of the guitars. The major focus on those was really wonderful. We had interesting breakdowns of those main chords and the harmonies, and we split them into these really neat arpeggiated bits. There were some really cool slides, like in Citadel as well. And I think that the quickness of the pace of this track with the way that the drums were handled added a bit more kind of energy and made it a bit more vibrant. The bass line underneath moving around the root notes as well as some parts of the scale shapes as well were uplifting. It's just little things as well, like sub-layers, like again those pads that you could hear a bit more clearly in the quieter sections there that were just on the sides, like, kind of reinforcing the main notes of those triads. It's just like, again, the ebb and flow of it, the dynamic range, the change in intensities between parts that make these short form tracks without stories necessitated. The stories are not necessitated, if I understand correctly, if that's in even English, because of the fact that the instrumental components there, the main melodies, the lead lines, etc., are so compelling. And you have different guitar parts as well, with different accents and different parts of the 8th note rhythms there, as opposed to some of the 16ths we had before, just because of the quicker tempo. But ultimately, it's a song where it establishes this clear sense of identity that is separate from the previous tracks, whilst also sounding similarly mixed to a quality that I'm really satisfied with. So they sort of sound like the same EP as well. And I think ultimately, if you're looking for someone to make beats for you like this, Chill Guru Beats has got you sorted. Yeah, it sparkled, it was nice and positive. That's kind of what light means to me. I can get it from the title. We got Sprite, track number 4. Oh, interesting chord there. great work having the vocals come in here. That build there with that sub bass is just so satisfying. That sound there for Sprite, track number 4, that kind of sealed it for me. I can kind of imagine it's like a Sprite sound, like the little fairy communicating you, kind of like in the Legend of Zelda games, you know, the sound that the little fairy makes in those, or in games like Guardians Crusade, which are a bit more niche. I appreciated the vocal work there and the ways it was presented, from like the main sort of like female leads there to the choir elements we had in other parts as well, which are a bit more subtle. The bounce of the drums with the bass there, it's just so tight, so incredibly vivacious and charismatic, and it really does want to get you sort of bopping along to it. As a music reviewer, it can be difficult for me to like completely focus on tracks to an extent when I'm really enjoying them, because all I want to do is just shut my brain off and just have fun with it. And I think that when we got into that main hook section, the loop that you had with the chords and how they iterated was really satisfying. And again, it's just a fun, different leads like that, that kind of lead there with the vocals intertwined with it. There were also, I think, some guitar parts which reinforced the existing triads in the piece. The bass, not just bouncy with the drums, but also being really full-bodied with occasional shaker movements and risers and moments where things came down, as per previous parts of this EP. It's professional grade. I think that I don't think you could really improve anything with the way that it's been produced. It just sounds like the way, like it's purely subjective. I'm sure there'll be someone out there listening to this that thought you could have put this louder or whatever, but it's like, that's it. Like, technically speaking, I listen to this and I listen to how things are put in stereo field, and the way that there's both main and sub layers there production wise. And the fact that there is a clear, lead there that you can pay attention to and follow along to, as well as others to trade off with, and the supportive elements are also really just, they uplift the experience. I don't really know what you could do to improve it. It's really good. And I think that the vocals that you have are really positive for just sort of humanizing it, I suppose, in a sense there, just in case people are really desperate to have a voice in there. We got Lumi, track number 5. A little bit of sort of like flamenco-ish kind of Latin American with that chromatic there. Really satisfying hit to those. We're really gripping onto that. We are sidechaining. And how the grip tape comes away and things float in the mist. The way those vocals are chopped there and they're oscillating. And you finish the EP with the sparkles up the octave. Nice, well done. I feel like we could have potentially allowed Lumi to kind of fade out a bit more at the end, just to allow it to sit for a few seconds to fade into silence there, but aside from that, very, very good. And again, it incorporates more spicy chord progression with those arpeggios, really asserting the chromatic in there, which adds a bit of kind of tension, but then it stays in the minor for a lot of it. It really kicks. The push of when that drop occurs and it's just slamming the limiter compressors and limiters is just fantastic. These are loud songs, and I get the feeling that they're not all the same loudness. It's more something that has been subjective to what Chill Guru Beats wants out of the tracks. I think that's a smart thing to do because, I mean, like, you just become a slave to the luffs otherwise. I think that the way that we had those vocal chops, it's just like the interesting way of not only including these vocal parts, but like adjusting them to create a different rhythm in the mix or a different layer or like a different element. The use of panning again with the parts at the end with like the synth going around the back of the headphones and everything like that is incredible. And it's just little bits like that which make this sort of spacey sounding EP come to a close in a way that's very satisfying. We kept with that motif there. I don't necessarily know what Lumi means necessarily. It could be to do with the moonlight, Luna or something like that. I could be wrong, or illumination or something like that. But either way, it's a great finale to an EP. It's another solid track there with a bit more kick, excuse the pun, than maybe some of the others had. Like, again, with how loud it is, how pushed it was in that drop section. With things coming out of that afterwards, even without necessarily getting perceivably quieter, just less constrained. They were almost playing with the idea that we know we can push like that in some bits and not, without it being too obvious that things have adjusted in a way that provides a variation in terms of the listening experience for the audience. But we're going to talk about this EP more though in the conclusion. Really good stuff. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this EP titled Dreamscape EDM Project Volume 2 by Chill Guru Beats. Now, what do I think this EP is about? I think this is more concepts that Chill Guru Beats is wanting to put forward. We have Citadel, Starlight, Lux, Sprite, and Lumi. Magical elements about stars and space and fortresses in the sky and light and little woodland creatures. They're all sort of like fantasy elements, things that are kind of fun to make music about. And I believe that this is Chill Guru Beats' sincere interpretation of these concepts and trying to put them forward in a way that is both palatable and authentic to themselves as a musician. They don't have lyrics. There were vocal chops and vocal parts there, and some of them were rises, some of them were sort of modulated, like and some of them were more sort of like just held notes or melodies on top of the existing backing arrangement. We also had some choirs, so I'm kind of not sure whether they were like choirs or like there were synth pads or something like that made to sound like that as sub-layers. The vocals that we did have, those ideas made sense with the music, added a more sort of human aspect to songs that are, I would say most of it is MIDI instruments, unless they're like the flutes that we had at the start, for example, in Citadel, I think they might have been recorded if I'm not mistaken, but either way, it's still incredibly gorgeous. And I just want to say that even though we did not have dedicated vocal parts, like they weren't telling stories within the tracks or anything like that, I don't think we needed them. I don't think that we needed that. I just thought we captured things the way we needed to in a way that was really well handled, and the songs were strong enough without that. Each of these tracks is about 2 to 3 minutes in length. They communicate a chord progression or like a main sort of idea. They build on it. They add a ton of different instruments. They don't oversaturate, but they add enough development throughout each piece to be intriguing and can retain interest throughout. and they are a testament to Chill Guru Beats' abilities as a music producer and a songwriter. And I love it. I think that each of these 5 songs has a clear, unique identity. There are a wide range of different instruments used within here, which I'm probably going to forget some if I list all of them. I'll talk about probably as many as I can remember without going too sort of like on a massive like spiel about it. But there were some fundamental elements that were continued throughout each of the tracks, such as, there were a lot of guitar parts, bass parts, drum parts, there were keys, there were synth leads and melodies, and there were also other atmospheric elements, which were sort of sub-parts. Structurally, most of these tracks, they immediately instantiated a clear sort of like idea, and they would typically sort of build, and then they would drop. And you had that wonderful, really satisfying push-pull thing going on there with each of these songs, which made them really quick. There's like little bits of candy that you eat, right? And I think that was smart, because if you put an idea forward for too long, even with one of those tracks being too long, especially if that's the one the person listens to, they can just assume all the other tracks are too long. So if you leave people wanting more, you invariably have people wanting more. And they will probably do that for more of your tracks, because that initial first impression was that they wanted more, if that makes sense. The guitar parts that we had here played major and minor chords. They played extensions. They typically were more sort of focused with picking or arpeggiating elements. There were some interesting slide ideas in Citadel and Lux. They were eloquent, sophisticated, and some of them were friendly, and some of them were a little more sort of like sleek or mysterious. Some of them were a bit sad sounding, but either way, the brightness, the clarity of them, and the tone in the mix, the way they were played, the rhythms used and instantiated, and the variations throughout each of the songs to make them independent were really well handled. I think that they were really well phrased, and the bass lines that went underneath those typically were either supportive of the root notes, or they went and explored scale shapes a little bit. We typically knew which one to choose, and I've got nothing but love for that. I think that the drums, typically they were quarter note accents. We might have had some 8ths or 16ths of some of the snare or clap beats, or like the little tippy tappies and stuff. I think we also had some tracks where like Starlight was like melodic percussion going around the sides of the stereo field, which I think was fantastic. It was nice to both understand the fundamentals of having that quarter note groove there, the push, getting people to dance along with different tracks and stuff like that, whilst also littering the stereo field with a lot of other different accompaniments or partnerships that boost things. Any keys or sort of similar ones, elements to that, typically they enhanced the chord progression, furthered what was going on with the guitar parts, or reinforced those main sort of triads there, or extended chords. We understood the concept of having that mid-range filled and having a bit of brightness there as well to sort of make it sparkle. And any lead elements we had alongside that were typically in that mid to high range there, where they either had they were there as a sparkly component there to just kind of twinkle, or they asserted the main melody and ended up off of another instrument. Or in situations like Citadel, we really just had a dedicated like a flute or something like that, which was a completely sort of like, it was a really interesting twist there, but it had such a signature tone that it's memorable, and that again is your first impression potentially to their work. So I like the fact that we were able to put some analog elements with some digital elements and sort of mix them together in a way which worked. And there are like other sort of like riser parts there. We understood not to have all the instruments all the time. Spoke about the themes within the individual tracks, and to try and give an all-round perspective is sort of disingenuous, because of the fact that I don't think that you can sort of summarize that they're all different. But the main idea I got from it was that we were continuing to sort of describe sort of fantasy or imaginary elements there. We were trying to establish worlds and environments where the instruments were trying to communicate that, even if the vocals weren't there to tell a story. And if the vocals were there, they further enhanced the listening experience by reinforcing those main ideas. Or again, like in songs like Lumi, I think we chopped them up and we sort of brought them back, and we really messed with the way they were heard in a way to make it sort of sound really cool. But I never listened to a track within this that I was like, why are they using this chord progression? Why are we going to this movement? Why are we... There was no filler. There was nothing that interrupted my experience with any sort of like even constructive criticism there. I don't know what they could have done to improve these tracks. It's just very, again, I say that from the bottom of my heart. I feel like these are just really solid tunes there. And I don't even think that having dedicated vocals doing lines would have necessarily improved them. I just think they're great as they are. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering is fantastic. I like the fact that we are doing our best to not only have everything neatly leveled, EQ'd, and surrounding yourself in a stereo field. We do some sort of like there was some going around the back stuff at the end of Lumi. We were going backwards and forwards quickly. It's like the energy we have for it, the passion that we have for music is clear. It's understanding that a lot of people can write a really good track, but it's about every single thing being ticked off so that there's no weak points. And here, the way stuff was, the way production was handled really well. There was dynamic range. Things were not the same loudness all the time. There was like range to that, but it was also nice and loud. And there were bits where it pumped, but it was deliberate. Other parts, it was a lot more low-key and a lot more manageable, and you could tell they're kind of taking it easy a little bit. They understood you can't have it the same all the time. Still professional grade. And yeah, really happy with this. Thank you for watching my review of this EP from Chill Guru Beats titled Dreamscape EDM Project Volume 2, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and Spotify page. And stay cool, stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.